Welcome to Own It, the podcast where we talk to real estate thought leaders about embracing your strengths, taking your career to new heights, and owning your future. I'm Hillary Saunders. Along with me is my charming co-host, Spencer Kroll.
I'm so charming today. You're charming. You're always charming. I'm working on charming today, Hillary. How's it going?
Well, you know what we're going to do today? We're going to talk to a very dear friend of mine, real estate industry maven, firecracker of a person. There's so many ways I can describe her. She's just incredible. She's the owner of D11, a company that she founded herself and focuses on providing intuitive coaching, life strategy, community building, just gusto and guidance to individual leaders and organizations. She's an Inman news contributor. She's an author, Fire Up, Taking Your Life and Business to 11. I think there's a theme here. 11 is a theme. She's the host of her own podcast, the Fire Up podcast and Spill the Tea series. And she's a keynote speaker and just an inspirational human being. So I'm so excited to introduce you. And I think you've met her before, Spencer.
I've met her before. I'm really looking forward to talking to her.
Debra Trappen. So before we get to her, I just want to share a little bit. I got to spend some time with her not too long ago at WomanUp, and she has these zingers of advice and just words of wisdom. So if you're at a spot where you can grab a pencil or something to write with to take notes, just be prepared. She's got some good stuff coming up. So welcome to Own It, Debra, my dear friend. I'm so excited that you decided to join us today.
Thank you for the invitation. If the pre-show is anything like what we're about to experience, this is going to be a fun chat.
Oh, yes. We'll get into the details of Spencer's recording booth later, maybe pictures in the show notes, but for another day.
It's a good booth. I promise you, it's really cool. Yeah.
Well, I am so excited to kick this off because you have so many accolades, so many entrepreneurial adventures in your life, in the real estate space, in the coaching space, in the podcast, books. I could go on and on. Where do I even start? Why don't we start with, how did you figure out you wanted to go the path of an entrepreneur? And then we'll dig into the details.
I don't think it was an actual intentional decision. Probably in my early 20s, I started actually event planning. Like I started doing event planning for my friends, their weddings and things like that. And that was probably when the serious, official bug hit, where I was like, oh, okay, this is good. Like people will pay me for what I'm good at, and I don't have to have a boss. Well, I did have a boss, me, but I could I could control her for the most part.
I feel like we're the toughest on ourselves, though. Those bosses that you got to answer to yourself. You have to make sure that all the things are done. You can't just hide behind anything. So
yes, that is true.
Do you think you're tougher on yourself than any boss was on you? Oh,
for sure. For sure. I mean, our negative self-talk, our critical, our inner critic, if you will, the studies are insane. 80% of what we say every day is repetitive. So every day we're thinking the same 80% of thoughts, and up to 90% of those are negative. And most of those negative thoughts are about ourselves in some way, shape, or form. And so 100%, I am the worst person on me. However, over the years, I've built structures. So when that triggers, I can shift out of it pretty quickly.
I got a question for you though, Debra. The event planning. I mean, there you are really at someone else's whim, right? So I'm just curious how you balanced, knowing what you need to do, get an event going, and I'm just going to say bridezilla. I don't know if I can say that or not, but that's sort of all the tension there.
Yeah. I have a divine gift around that. I can't really explain it. It's obviously not something I learned in school, where people innately trust my vision. And so I didn't really have a whole lot of that. I didn't have bridezillas because it really, I would sit down and learn all about them, hear what their dream was, and do my best to get them there. And there was just something very peaceful about it. And so when I see the shows, the reality TVs about these brides that have gone wild, it's like, yeah, I didn't experience that. And I still don't. I mean, it doesn't mean I don't have haters. Like, I've got the naysayers and the haters and the people who kind of follow me looking for the crumbles of failure. But I'm like, my failures are my lessons. Bring it. Like, if you want to highlight it, go for it. I'll tell you what I learned.
Yeah. What's so funny about that is that in our conversations and that the handful of years that we've, known each other, is that I've picked up that you are very good at listening to other people and picking up on what they're saying and then translating it back into how they can, utilize that to their benefit. So it sounds like you took the time to be diligent with your clients, heard what they were trying to accomplish, and then repeated it back in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. And I also have a superpower of finding things that people want for a really good price.
Ooh, that's a separate show. We need to talk after.
So even if it wasn't exactly what they wanted, they saved like 10 grand and they were like, woo! So, you have to find your magic recipe, right? The things that are going to bring all of those red threads together and weave something spectacular.
Well, just when you're talking to somebody in terms of what their dreams are, what's your process in terms of finding out what it is that they want?
Well, I think, if you're talking about events, people have an idea of what they want it to be when they decide they want to have an event. So whether it's a wedding or a birthday party or a women's conference, they have an idea of why they're doing it. And so usually right inside the first question of why do you want to do this, they spill the beans. And if they don't, I'm very famous for 3 words, and that is tell me more.
That is perfect for any realtor listening too, especially if you're working for buyers, right? Tell me more about that. Okay, you said this. Tell me more about it. That's like, take that, put it in your pocket. If you get nothing else out of today, that's magic sauce.
Yeah, there's a saying in real estate that drives me bananas. Can you guess what it is based on what you just said?
Oh gosh. I don't know what I want.
Buyers are liars.
Oh yeah.
It's the worst saying. And I think it's agents don't know how to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And yeah.
No, I think it just rhymes. I mean, truthfully, I've really never found. I'm being serious because what is it? Buyers, liars, and sellers are greedy or something or whatever it is. Buyers are liars rhymes, right? So what questions should buyers be asked, or what questions should agents be asking from their buyers?
Well, I think that really depends on what your focus is. I'm a huge proponent of agents niching down and really understanding who their ideal client is, what their biggest issues are, how they ultimately solve that, and how they want every client to feel before, during, and after a transaction. I actually write about that in the Fire Up book, because I found through asking the tell me more, why do you say that about buyers, that most agents don't do an intake. They're just like, ooh, somebody filled out some form or made a phone call and said, I want to see this house. And that's how their meetings start, right? They're actually meeting sometimes a complete stranger, either at their office or at a house, and showing them the house. And they're kind of fumbling through understanding what it is that their client, the buyer, actually needs. And so I would highly suggest, they're all over the place on the internet. So just do like a buyer intake questionnaire and build it, right? If you focus on equestrian properties, then make sure that you're weaving that in. Like, how many horses do you have? How many horses do you want? It shouldn't only be about the number of bedrooms and bathrooms and square footage. It is where we live is where we're planting the seeds for our dreams. And if we don't actually understand what our client's dream is for that house, there's no way that we're going to be able to help them in a way that they're going to leave feeling empowered and that they've made the most amazing choice. Their dream doesn't have to be like, I'm going to live in this house for 20 years and raise, humans or puppies. It could be an investment property. It could be a place for their parents or their children. And so I think that, again, it's really easy to blame it on the consumer that, the process takes so long. But I think once you get really clear with who you are and who you serve, and then what questions you want to ask those people, it really, again, it magically produces clarity. Right.
Yeah.
I have a buyers or liars story, really quick one. Okay. So I had
I can't wait.
buyer. No, it's just when you said this and I used to have a questionnaire. I used to fill out a questionnaire when I was selling. And I asked him, and he said that he didn't care about the bedroom. He just wanted a big living room. He entertains a lot. Bedroom, he just goes into sleep. So there was a condo I was previewing for him, and the living room, wasn't much. It was a huge bedroom, and I realized he didn't want it. And he went and saw the open house on his own, and then called me and said, "How could you not have told me about this place?" And I said, "You filled out the questionnaire. We've had conversations about it, that all you care about is the living room." He goes, "But that bedroom was fantastic." And so, I think sometimes part of the journey is helping them understand what it is that they really want, which I guess is your job as a coach too.
Certainly. And I learned within the first 6 months of when I actually sold real estate that the broker I had at the time, who was basically like, "Oh, you're 20 something. At that point, I'm going to totally age myself, but I had a Palm Trio. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, you have a laptop of your own. Like, you totally are going to work with the first time home buyers. You're going to speak their language." And I was like, "Great. Like this is my, quote unquote boss. He totally sees this connection for me with these buyers." And after 6 months, I was so exhausted. I was like, "This job sucks. What have I gotten into? This is not what I imagined." And mind you, I kind of already had the feeling that I was going to get into kind of the training, recruiting side of real estate when I was in my fast start class as a new agent, because I was like, "Oh, that guy's job is what I really want in this industry." But I digress. What I realized is when I went through a life coaching program, that my values were constantly being violated by first-time home buyers. I valued aesthetics. They were looking for a deal. So I was like looking at cat pee houses. I was looking at tiny little condos. I was like, "This is awful. Like, this is not fun." But I also value mastery of time, efficiency, effectiveness, and they're anything but, because they're in a learning stage, right? They want to see everything on the market. And so I was like, "Wow, my God, these people want to see 40 or 50 homes. They can't make a decision. What's going on?" And when I went through the life coach program, I realized, okay, I need to focus on luxury clients and investors. And also focused on relo, because to me, working with the relo teams and giving up at that point was like 35% of my commission was no big deal, because those people would fly in. I would show them 6 houses. They'd decide, we'd write an offer, and off they went. And I was like, it's worth the 35% because I valued my time over that money. But I didn't realize any of that because wasn't part of the curriculum when I started in real estate, right? They're just like, somebody says to you, "Oh, this would be perfect for you," or you get partnered with a mentor who is exhausted and tired of doing business. And so all of a sudden you're doing all of their deals and their business for your slice. And you're like, "Wait a minute," you get lost. And I think that's why, we have that 3-year burnout in the industry, is because people are not serving the people they're meant to serve. They're not finding it and truly attracting the clients who share their same soul tank passions. And because once you do that, once you connect those threads with each other, it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't, you don't, I joke in some of my workshops about how real estate, you can get into the point with clients where they are pushing you out of your integrity. And everyone kind of goes, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, you lie to your clients." And they're like, "Never, I don't ever lie." I'm like, "Really? Has a client ever called you and you hit that little button on your phone that says, 'I'm in a meeting right now'?" because you don't want to talk to them.
I do that to Spencer all the time.
It's we do these little tiny white lies. And it's one thing like when it's a buddy and you're like, oh my God, I'm like in the grocery line, I can't talk to you right now. But it's another when you're trying to avoid a client because you don't want to have a conversation with them. And I feel like if you really have a foundational connection with them, again, you value and honor each other's values, and you honor each other's passions, the things that you're doing on a soul level, and that you're actually serving them inside your purpose. It works out. You start to attract the right people. It's just so many people start in this business and start building that book of business with people they have nothing in common with. That, they're constantly like, I'm a dog person, I'm a cat person, I like beer, I like wine. And so they're constantly like at odds with each other. And you can't build a fulfilling business. You can build a prosperous business, but it's not necessarily going to fulfill you if you're dealing with people who you're really not meant to serve.
Yeah, it sounds amazing advice to even newer people to the business, right? I think a lot of newer agents like do the shotgun approach, right? I need a client. Mm-hmm. And with that, you get anybody and anything. And like you said, the meshing just isn't going to happen. You have to be very targeted with who your ideal client is and that matches your personality. I think that's a huge takeaway.
Yeah, I think that a red flag or a trigger on that is anytime you're saying, I need something, it's time to step back. Need is very fear-based word, and it's a scarcity word versus an abundance word. And again, I find that so often agents, even brokers, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business. I mean, I've re-taught the Fire Up workshop to probably 150 people post-pandemic that went through it before, because they're different. Mm-hmm. They're simply different. Their values shifted. And, we have to honor that. We all turned out differently on the other side of the last few years. And I truly believe most of it is for the good. It's for the good of our souls. It's for the good of our business. And, the people out there who want to get right back to the hustle and the grind, it's like, let them. You want to do that? Go for it. But I have no desire to step back into the life I had in 2019.
I need to ask you a question. I'm using need on purpose. Just. You're just talking to you. You're a very spiritual person. You talk about soul tank. I'd love to hear about that. But how did you become so spiritual? Like where did you fit in on this whole kind of universal wave of whatever?
Yeah. I was raised in a conservative Christian house, not evangelical Christian. It's Lutheran. So it's like Catholic light. And at a very young age, I was 13. I wrote a letter to the pastor. And because we have this thing in the Lutheran church where everyone gets this little book of like offering envelopes. So like imagine this little book and you kind of rip the envelope off and it has a place where you can write how much you gave, and then you put it on the envelope, and then this little bowl is passed around, you put the little money in, and it's like this big deal because like you've made money and you're going to give money to, like further the mission. Mm-hmm. And I was so excited to get that little book after I'd gone through confirmation. And so like 3 weeks after I'd been confirmed, they had this big meeting, like the voters meeting. And so I was like, Dad, I'm so excited. Like I get to go to my first meeting. And he was like, well, you actually don't, because you're a girl. And I was like, wah, wah. So I wrote a letter to the pastor, who, by the way, never responded. And that was kind of the first shift from kind of that conservative space to like, where do I belong? And I kind of wandered, and then I came back kind of into the traditional attraction church, like where it's got the pastors in Prada, and there's a kick-ass band on stage. And I was like, okay, this could be like my kind of community, and realized quickly that it wasn't, because it was still the same, ladies got the mic at the women's conference. Mm. And I was like, what is happening in this world? And so I just kind of created my own world and started attracting my own community. I fell in love with shamanism. I have morning rituals that I've stuck with like nobody's business in the last, say, 5 or 6 years. And again, the pandemic was a huge blessing for me because I was actually able to slow down. I wasn't constantly packing and unpacking a suitcase. I could actually have quiet time. That's when my bestie and I, Molly McKinley, we created Spill the Tea. We did Spill the Tea throughout the entire pandemic. And we talked about books and authors and like crystals and goddesses and like all of the things. And it was so amazing to me that the reaction in the community. I think that people are looking for a way to have a spiritual experience that isn't controlling, that allows you. Yeah.
You hit on something too. It's uniquely you, right? Yeah. We are all unique human beings. And at the core of it, I think we're all searching for belonging in some way, and to find what works for you is, you can do it. Find what it, makes you happy and fills your soul tank.
That's right. Yeah. And that in real estate is the same, right? It's finding the right people to build your business with. It's finding the right brokerage to, plug into and bring your energy into. And there is a right fit for everyone. And that's why it's like the competition side of real estate to me is such an unfortunate piece. Because if we all really just sat down, and I know this is going to sound a little kumbaya, but like if we all really realized who each other is, then we would never have a frustration with a client. We would be like, my crazy Aunt Judy drives me nuts, but I know that Hillary and her are going to hit it off. So I'm going to actually refer that business to Hillary because they're going to have a great experience together. I'll get a little referral cash on the side, but I want my crazy aunt and for Hillary to create a connection. I don't need to do that business. Right. Because I know that once I release that, all of the mind space that's taken up by clients where we have that cringiness with, like that doesn't only impact that sale. It impacts your entire attraction model. Like once you feel it though, you'll never go back. It's just getting people to experience that. It's like getting people to the point where they feel successful and they taste it success. They're like, oh, I want more. Like, I want to do that again. I want to figure out what did I do? How do I do that again? What do I need to do next time? And so I think that it's just all part of experimenting. Right? Like, does this fit? Does that fit? No, that I don't like that word. I don't like, that place over there doesn't fit for me. And it's really, it's opened up my world. It kind of cracked open this space of me that I was like, I don't even want to talk about spirituality because, in today's climate, it's kind of, woo, a lot of crazy out there. And so I'm loving the flow that I'm in because it does exactly, Hillary, it allows me to be who I am.
I just want to point out, for if you're listening and not watching behind you, it's like I see the candle and a little like incense altar sort of thing there. So it is really, really, you are you. You are definitely being authentic to yourself. And that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it allows other people to do the same, which is, I think, something that we underestimate, right? Like so many people hide their fire under whatever it is, shame, guilt, embarrassment, because they think that if they share that with the world, that they're going to lose something. Right.
And I think, and you're leading by example, right? You're leading forward and saying, this is me and I am proud of me. And that, I think, also allows your audience to get the strength to be themselves and see that it's okay to embrace whatever it is that I feel like. So I want to find out. So you spent about 10 years-ish at Coldwell Banker Bain, right? Yeah. And then you branched off. And was that at the same time or before you created your own company, D11?
So D11 was a spark. And there was a moment, I was at an Inman conference in New York City. And this was 2011. Yes, 2011. And I was on the top of 30 Rock, and I had I cannot even explain it more than just saying it was like a Holy Spirit moment. where I literally like, I got chills, and it was like, I heard my inner voice saying, stop playing small. Like, stop, you are meant for more, stop playing small. And it was like, we've all had that moment, right? Everyone's shaking their head here. It's like, but I was like, no. I love my job. Like, I love traveling for this company. I have an expense account, like I'm good. Like, I'm good. I don't feel like I'm playing small. I'm in freaking New York City. Like, how is this playing small? And I couldn't shake it. And so about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks later, I walked into my boss's office. It was also a mentor of mine. And I was like, I have to go. And he was like, damn, I knew you were going to say it. So like, even he knew, like he knew, because I was outgrowing where I was. This is really important for anyone who's listening. It's like when the flow is blocked, when things get hard, when people are constantly coming at you for the things that you normally have done, but something has shifted, like that's a sign that it's time for change. And I think we've gotten so complacent and frightened of change because of the media, and the media is like, oh, change. They tell us all we're scared of change, when the reality is that change is life. And so I've really learned to listen to that kind of that internal dialogue that's like, God, why is that person coming after me for saying that? I've been saying that for 5 years, right? Like, why is it all of a sudden under fire? Well, maybe it's time for me to refine that thought, or maybe it's time for me to cut that person out. Like, maybe, maybe something like that is happening. But I'll tell you, the second that shift happened, and my boss at the time was like, okay, I know you need to go. It opened. Within 2 weeks, I was gone. They were actually my first client. So I did a consulting gig for them, set them up with some things. He helped connect me to some other people. I did a big, my first like big contract was with Coldwell Banker National, where I did this whole like social media, personal branding series. But here's where the rub is. I left that job, that corporate gig, and just basically was doing my corporate gig for myself. I didn't actually reinvent myself.
But I wonder. Oh, go ahead, Spencer. I was just
gonna. I think one of the first times I actually met you, you were in LA at the Skirball. I think you were doing something for the Greater Los Angeles Realtors or something like that.
Probably.
But I remember us as like kind of you were talking about like taking these steps, and that it really can be scary. You're very brave, and you listen to yourself. What is it that makes people not move forward? I mean, what is the fear?
Of the unknown. It's unknown. I mean, I think that when you say no in real estate, you say no to a client that you know is not a holy hell yes. When you say no, you know. And so when you have to learn to trust in the process, that when you say no to that client that feels off, that there is going to be an amazing flow of clients that are the holy hell yes clients right behind that person. And I think that's part of what we're here to learn, is that it isn't about the quick and easy. There is some suffering here. There is some, climbing and scratching and learning and failing, and that's beautiful. But because again, there's such a just this awful storyline, right? This false narrative that we're all supposed to be happy, we're all supposed to be skinny, we're all supposed to be this or that or this or that, whatever it is in the flow at the moment, that we're constantly judging ourselves against what someone else says the right thing is. And so I think that fear it really is like, oh my gosh, if I'm myself, what if I fail? Then everyone's going to laugh at me. Or what if I can't make my bills because I'm not saying yes to this client? And that's real, right? I get, like, especially when you're brand new, you're going to have to do some of those deals where you're dealing with your crazy aunt.
After going on your own, what did you fail at, or what was an example of something that you tried and just didn't work out, and what did you learn from it?
Where I was kind of going earlier, which was I left my corporate job and basically just took that job into my D11 consulting, where I was doing social media and personal branding and all those things that I was really known for when I was out on the road for CB Bain. But that wasn't really what I was all about. And it took me a few years to get that. So I launched the company in October of 2011, and at the kind of mid 2014. So yeah, about 2-ish years later, I was like, this is not working. Like, it doesn't feel right. I couldn't even choose colors or a message. I felt like I was constantly kind of changing it. And I was like, this isn't right, right? I wasn't finding flow. And that's actually when I started writing the book. I was at a conference and I was like, yeah, just like give your BHAG, right? And I was like, all right, I want to write a book. And they were like, okay, you said it out loud. And I was like, okay, well, I want to finish the book by the end of the year. What craziness. This was like in March. I was like, I'm going to write a book by the end of the year, but I did it because it was, I said it. And that's what shifted it for me. That's actually when everything in my business started to really, truly flow, because that kind of became my calling card. Like when people are like, who are you and what are you all about? I'm like, this book. Because I like this, and it's about core values. It's about filling your soul tank. It's about uncovering your purpose. It's about defining your niche. And then for real estate in specific, it was like, how do you take who you are as a whole human and use that in your business? How do you find those people? How are you attracting them? How are you walking the path with them? And it was the culmination of the frenetic energy that I had in the business at the beginning. And also, quite frankly, people would say things to me like, your messages are really feminine, Debra. I was like, tell me more. What does that mean? And, the real estate space has had a majority of male coaches and male speakers on stages, and their analogies are war. They're battle analogies and sports analogies. And so when I was coming on talking about like carpentry analogies, like sewing and tapestry, and using words that were considered to be more quote unquote feminine, it was jarring for them. They were like, I'm not really sure my audience or my agents are going to like that. And I was like, well, let's just give it a try. And I remember I did a keynote in Colorado. And the team they were probably one of the most nervous, because that was back right after the book launch. It was probably early 2016. And I kind of had this whole shtick, like I wore black and white polka dots. My hair, had a very 40s look. It was very dramatic and it was super fun. And they were like, I don't know about this. I think the men are going to freak out. And I'll tell you, doing the signing afterwards, it was more men than women at the front of the line. And they were like, I've never heard things like this before. I can't wait to use this in my business. I love your fresh perspective. And so once that kind of word started getting out there, like, oh, okay, there can be an alternative. It doesn't have to be hustle, hurry, slay, kill, crush. Like, it doesn't have to be that. It could be nurture, connect.
I think I was one of those people probably online because I remember like hearing you speak and thinking like, wow, that was different than anything I had heard before. And it's interesting that shifts. So have you coached people that have coached with other people?
Certainly. I mean, I don't do a ton of one-on-one coaching anymore because it's an intense undertaking. But yeah, I mean, and I'm very proud to say that the leaders that I have coached have very successful, very unique businesses and business models. And they went after what filled their soul tank first, and the money flowed. And they built their businesses around, creating activities that attracted their ideal clients. And they're now on their second and third purchases with those people because they created a connection that is unbreakable. Like when I hear those stats from NAR, right? Like 80% of clients would use their real estate agent again, but like really less than 20% can even know where they are. It's like, oh, not on my watch.
So I know you are a huge proponent, and I love this about you, of, we'll say, female empowerment, letting giving the fire to other female entrepreneurs to go out and do what they are dreaming to do. What are some common pushbacks that you've experienced along the way? Why they're not doing it themselves already? Why do they need that extra push of support to get the ball rolling?
Yeah, it's a multitude of reasons, but I would say the sweet spot in that is usually about confidence. They haven't experienced being a leader, being called a leader. It's interesting, especially with women. When I ask them like who your mentors are, they're like, "Oh, I don't have a mentor." And I'm like, "You do. Let's dig in." And so of course we go through the tell me more, like, who do you go for this? Who do you go for that? And they're like, "That's a mentor." I'm like, "That's a mentor." Yeah. But in women think it's friends, right? They're like, "Oh no, that's my friendships." I'm like, "Yes, but friends are also mentors." Right? You know, we all have a personal board of advisors, whether we call them that or not. And you can be intentional with that and say that, you know, these are the people that I go to for marriage advice. These are the people I go to for parenting advice. These are the people, you know, you can build it out that way, or it could be haphazard. Either way, it's still there. Same with values. You have values. You just haven't, if you haven't written them down, it doesn't mean you don't have values. It just means they're haphazardly being aligned and honored in your life. And trust me, once you actually honor and align to them, your life is beautiful. It's magical. And so, so confidence is a big one, but I do also want to point out that I think it really is for like mid millennials and up that's an issue. I think the younger generation coming in, every generation comes down to this planet more enlightened than those before them. And
have you watched the movie Soul? I think so.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
So clear. It's clear.
It is so clear. And so we've got, you know, if you believe in things like that, we carry like ancestral wounds in our bodies. Like we as women who are in our 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s in this industry, we are carrying this this weight that we didn't personally earn. And so it's unlearning, I find, as opposed to me teaching them to be more confident. It's helping them to unlearn those false narratives, unlearn the self-limiting talk. And in work like I do with California Association of Realtors with WomanUp, it really is about sharing their stories with each other. Because once they see someone and hear someone who sounds like them, who's had a journey like them, or who's had a journey that in their mind is far more difficult, yet they've risen up and into their potential, into their dream, it shifts something inside. It turns on the light for themselves. I'm not doing that personally. I'm simply guiding them to, you know, come to this seat. This table is ever expanding. Like there is always room for you, so that they feel that. And then they bring someone else next time who's sitting next to them, who then gets the spark and says, "Oh my gosh, I could do it too." "Oh, really?" And every year we have stories inside the WomanUp community of women who are like, "I came here to support my friend and or hear the keynote speaker or whatever. And oh my God, I just got my broker's license. I'm starting my own brokerage," you know, because they see something in someone else that makes them believe deeper in themselves. And so I think that that's really kind of at the core, is helping them believe in themselves without telling them to believe in themselves.
Yeah. I'm wondering, so you are finding a lot of you are guiding, as you said, a lot of people, listeners. Where do you find your inspiration, or who inspires you?
I am a voracious reader. Well, really, I think lately I'm more of a listener. I love to listen to books. And so that's really my number one place. But like I mentioned, I also have a shaman. So I do like journey circles with her. I have a coach. So my coach inspires me. But on the daily, it really is, it's books that make me think differently. I mean, I'm thinking right now, like we're just talking about words and, like the battle analogies versus like these, gardening analogies that feel like so out of whack. And there's this book, Elizabeth Lesser wrote it. It's called Cassandra Speaks. It's such a great book. It's a great listen too, because Elizabeth reads it herself, but it really, it helps us unlock those stories that we know that we want to believe, but that we've kind of been taught aren't worthy of being listened to. And she talks about Cassandra, who's obviously a goddess, but she talks about that story and then weaves it into helping us understand how that really impacts us in today's world. Like all of the universities, the top 100 books that students are required to read, 98% of them are written by men. And almost every single one of them is related to, the art of war, some sort of battle or sports or very like othering us versus them, right? The convincing people to do things as opposed to communicating with people and hearing and understanding. And that like that we have the ability, like, sure, when you're in university, those are the books you're required to read. But we as a society, as a community, as a circle, can also be introducing books like Cassandra Speaks and say, hey, listen to this great book. It will help you see things differently. More Than a Body, man, that is a great one for any woman listening right now. And any man who is dating a woman, has a sister, has a daughter, has a mother. It's all
like, basically everyone.
Basically anyone who has any desire to learn anything more about women. I mean, the statistics are horrible, right? Like 2% of women, when are asked, think that they're beautiful.
Oh, 2%. That's sad.
It is sad. And most of it has to do directly with their bodies, like this vessel, this divine vessel that's carrying us around here that has nothing to do with actually who we are, but it's become this like defining factor in our success. Well, she's successful because she's pretty or she's thin or whatever. Like we've created all of these boundaries around it, but More Than a Body knocks that stuff. Oh my gosh. This twin women, I think they're millennials. They both have doctorate degrees and they shred so much of that apart. Like once you read it, you can't have the same thoughts you used to have anymore because they're immediately replaced. I should say that the thoughts still pop in, like I'm not good enough, or oh my God, where did that wrinkle come from, or where's that back fat? What the heck? But it gets you past it so much faster, and I think that's the magic. Right. I think what inspires me is hearing that one thing in a book or that one thing in a reel on Instagram and going, oh yeah, my people are going to eat this up. And it happened this year at WomanUp with Let Them. I don't know if you were in the room for that, Hillary, but I did a keynote this year on radical acceptance. And I was trying to figure out like, what's that thing that's going to bring everybody in and get them to understand it. And it was this reel by Mel Robbins. I don't know if you know who Mel Robbins is.
Yeah,
she's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. I love her, but I'm more Brene than I am Mel. And so I've learned that when Mel shows up in my feed, that it's something big that I need to see because I don't go to her page, whereas I go to Brene's page. We're on first name basis, clearly. But it was on this concept of let them. Right. So your husband folds the towels differently than you. Let them. Somebody puts the toilet paper roll on the wrong way. Let them. They park in 2 spots. Let them. It's all this idea of just letting people be the fullest bloom of themselves and reminding us all that we're wasting our time when we're trying to get people to fold the towels like us. Like that's precious time.
I'm a seat down guy, number one. I just want to make that really clear. But the second thing is toilet paper got to come over the top. I apologize, Deborah. There are certain things I cannot let them. I want to ask you a question. D11, which I love the name. If you could just tell me the name of that and where do you see it in 5 years?
So D11, 11 is a big number, personally and professionally. For anybody out there who's seen the movie Spinal Tap. Yes. If you have not, please do yourself a favor. I mean, Christopher Guest and the company are spectacular in that. But there's the scene where it's talking about the amp and about how it goes to 11. And that really resonated with my husband and I. And when we first started dating, I was living in apartment 1111. He was in apartment 11. Like it was just showing up for us everywhere we went. And it became kind of this symbol of we are where we're meant to be, and what can we do to take it to 11. And so when I was trying to figure out what I was going to call my business, I was like, what is my business? And so D11 was perfect because my handle pretty much on every social that I'm on is Debra 11. And so going D11 made it super easy. And it also it gives me an opportunity to kind of weave that the social object that number 11 has become into my brand. And to this day, I mean, we're not into the, Twitter and giving everyone our handles like we were, say, 10 years ago, where that was a big part of our moniker. But I still get people almost every week who message me, "Oh, I parked in spot 11," or I'm in room 1111, or it's 1111 on my phone, and they snap a picture and send it. It's become synonymous with who I am in the business, and I love that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is fun. And we all have a social object of some sort. And so it's just figuring, again, because it's so authentically me and because I have a story behind it, it planted a seed and it becomes a memory in everyone that I meet. And so people I've only met once or twice, I tell the story on stage, they think of me when they see 11. I mean, this is not difficult. It's about being real and raw and honest with people when you're talking to them and guiding them to where you're trying to get them to go, or at least when you're trying to share your heart for something that you feel is going to bring them joy.
Yeah. Lastly, before we run out of time, where do you want your company and your journey to go in the next handful of years?
Well, I am working on something exciting and new. I can't talk about it yet because it's not going to launch until later this year. But at heart, I am a master community builder. That is my sweet spot. It is listening to people, getting them connected to one another, and really helping them to really engage with one another. When I went through that life coach program, we had to write a life vision statement, right? And there is a lot of power in that. I don't know if anybody here has written it. Had written their own kind of life statement or vision statement, but I wrote mine, and I live to engage or ignite passion, infuse purpose, and inspire progress by connecting, engaging, elevating, and empowering the magnificent relationships and brilliant ideas in my world. That's on my wall. And it's what I get to do every day because I planted that in the ground and said, this is what I want to do. And so where I see myself in 5 years is doing that on a bigger scale. It's connecting more people with more brilliant minds and more brilliant ideas, and hopefully in there being able to help people make their dreams come true, maybe a grant program of some sort, but building in a philanthropy piece that allows people who are kind of sitting on the sidelines because of money, which drives me nuts, but helping them, lifting them up to the point where maybe they just need a computer, or, maybe they just need next month's rent covered so that they can plant that money somewhere else. So I think that's in a tiny, tiny way. I promise to come back if you'll have me and tell you about what's happening next.
I think it's awesome. Spencer,
yeah. No,
I'm
gonna go over time just for a second, and maybe we cut this out if we don't have time for this. But just really quick, I saw that you craft affirmations for people.
I do.
That is amazing. Tell me. No, watch this. I'm listening to you. Tell me more.
So one of the things that I learned over the years is that affirmations mean nothing if you actually can't feel the feelings that you'll feel on the other side of that affirmation coming true. And so when I started doing, asking more questions, I came upon the thought ladder. So you can Google that. What's the thought ladder with affirmations? Just kind of working your way to believing it is one way. Right? Like, what can you believe today? And then what can you believe tomorrow? However, I found that the same way I build a niche statement for someone, again, their ideal client, what it is that their biggest problem is and how you solve that, and then how you want them to feel. That formula, I created one for writing their custom affirmations as well. So it talks about like, what is it that they want, right? Is it that they want to honor a value more? Is it that they have a dream that's only a seed right now that they want to come to life? And then we build it based on that first piece. What do they want more of? And it's always, what do they want more of? Never what do they want less of, right? It's always what are they seeking to bring into their lives? And it is quite magical. I love the process. And it also helps me get to know people on a deeper level, right? And that allows me to get them connected to the right people when somebody calls and says, hey, do you know somebody who does this or who can talk on this topic? And I'm like, oh, yes.
I just absolutely love and appreciate how in tune you are with other people's needs. And I think you just said it. You are a community builder. You are a person who inspires others, but gives them guidance and really wants best for other people. And I think that goes back to what we started talking about at the beginning, which is the abundance mindset, right? Mm-hmm. When you make that shift to an abundance mindset versus scarcity, it puts you in a different realm. And that I think people can take and really consciously work towards, because the clients will come, whatever you're working on will come. If you give unto others, you shall receive type of situation.
Beautifully.
But Debra, I appreciate you and everything that you give to our real estate community, and you are an inspiration to me all the time. So I thank you for that.
Thank you, Hillary. That means a lot to me. Thank you. It's been a joy. This has been fun.
I love it. And we will get a list of your books and things that you mentioned, and we'll put them in the show notes too. So Spencer, any parting words to our lovely guest, Debra?
You're fantastic. That's all. I'll just leave it at that.
You two are pretty rad.
Sum it up. I love it. Thank you again for being our guest, and we'll follow up with you and find out what that new adventure is soon for sure.
Thanks again. Have a great day.
Thanks, Debra.
Bye. Bye.